When a business feels chaotic, how do you typically identify if it's a tech problem or a people problem?
Both. It's so easy to blame the tool.
How do you get buy-in from non-techie people?
There's two approaches for it. You touched on kind of both of those. So one of them is the rational, logical way, and
All right, good afternoon. With me today, we have John Vanko. So John is a CTO, a product leader, and a tech innovator based out of Austin, Texas. So John, I'll just let you share a little bit about yourself, and thank you for being here.
sure, well, thank you for inviting me. So I've been in tech for quite a while, and I've had a career always in the software development space. But I've bounced around into consulting, into founding a startup, bit on the sales side as well. So it's really interesting how those have connected dots later on as well. So right now I'm the CTO and head of product at Pavelka, which is a well-being company. So we have well-being programs for employees, and we target mid-market and enterprise customers with those programs. So we have services, and we also have a software platform. So right now it's a SaaS plus AI driven, and we're building out this platform to serve more customers.
Awesome. Yeah, I was taking a look at the website. It looks like you kind of gather the issues that the culture is facing, whether it's stress, burnout, et cetera. And then what happens then? Do you diagnose kind of which plan they need to follow?
He wrote a book with Eat, Sweat, Think, Connect, which are 4 elements that you can look through different lenses at well-being from. And we also apply that to, for instance, preventing corporate burnout, creating resiliency, things like that. And we look in terms of, well, we have leadership programs where we work with the leaders, and then we do coaching, we have workshops, we run challenges for their teams. We run different assessments against them and their teams to see how well that their ideas of themselves versus the employees on their team are in sync. We also have ambassador programs where we promote these kind of representatives within the teams, which are well-being kind of representatives. We also have other programs that we run, which are kind of like structured programs and they're all focused at driving well-being around the top down, and then from the bottom up we also have the software platform, which is an overall wellness well-being platform with educational content, with assessments, and personalized information and practices that the employees can do. So there's a web app as well as a mobile app with feature parity.
Gotcha. So when companies come to you, are they usually trying to, do they usually know what issue they're facing, or do you kind of help them identify, hey, this is probably a burnout issue? Or is it an operational issue where you're trying to say, or they come to you and say, hey, I'm having an operational issue, and you kind of diagnose and you say, well, no, I think this might be a stress issue or a burnout issue or just a culture issue, well-being?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends if they're coming to us. They already have a particular pain point that they're coming to us with. So they might just simply want to make their teams more active and run some fitness challenges, things like that. But it could also be that they're in a high stress kind of industry. Finance, tech are some of those industries. And I leave that to in the beginning conversations when we're doing a commercial proposal, then the founders will be involved and they'll kind of diagnose that. So first of all, there's a lot of listening that we have to do, and then he'll take a look at it. So Jesse will typically be in there. I may be pulled in, but he'll diagnose those issues that they're having. And some of our biggest customers are those industries who are having, they have to grapple sometimes with stress and burnout, things like that. They may have want to create a kind of between different regions. They want to create the same kinds of programs in each area around the world globally. And so we'll sit down and listen to them and do a diagnosis in the beginning.
Gotcha. Do you ever find that they're hesitant to share all the information during that discovery phase?
They're not really sure about where to go with it. So, and they don't want to lead with saying, I want an app, for example. I think most of them don't really believe that an app can solve their issues. And, we have a lot of data saying that the statistics are if you just give someone an app, you have a particular level of engagement versus if you have services and you have their leadership involved and you have that top down kind of entry. So I think it's basically we that's why we take the both approaches, top down, bottom up.
Gotcha. To drive that engagement, do y'all do any type of like gamification or anything like that?
Well, that's interesting because gamification is, it has its pluses and it can have minuses too in well-being. Like not everybody wants to compete when they're doing, for example, we have employees who don't want to be on a leaderboard in a challenge. Others do. They're more competitive, and either one is okay. So you can actually over gamify the system for a particular organization. So we try to make it flexible as possible for them to decide which elements that they want to gamify and which they don't.
Now, do y'all have a sales team that has different, like you've got a person or a team to go after certain industries, or is it more people are coming to you and saying, hey, we've got an issue, you guys are credible, we want to work with you, and it's kind of a leadership approach?
Yeah, through our previous customers and clients. So since we've been around for a while, we've been around more than a decade. So some of the leaders that we've worked with from particular clients have then gone on to other businesses and other industries. So we end up getting a lot of business from referrals and that kind of word of mouth in breaking in there. So that's really nice at this point where that we can leverage that.
Awesome. Well, if you're okay with it, we'll get into the questions.
Sure, sounds good.
Awesome. So first, kind of big picture question. What's the number one operational bottleneck that you've seen companies face?
Yeah, and now, AI is nothing new nowadays, but before AI, then we were in an age where we had to deal with that execution slowness, especially like in software development. So everything tended to take a long time, even if you're using agile development. And now with AI, that has shifted where we can do a lot of those things like code, we can generate code and automate a lot of the programming work and other work that the developers would do. So now I think because we do have AI, we have agents that can do these things. It hasn't made things necessarily easier, but it has kind of pushed things up to where now maybe instead of doing all of those things, the detailed work, now you're at a level where you're focusing on decision making. So the decision making and the hard decisions, because now you're at a level where the AI, you have basically an AI team or an AI organization beneath you, and you're making big decisions like what your priorities are, the approvals that you have to make, the architecture, so that you don't spiral out of control. There's, in the case of software development, there's code bloat. There's AI slop is a real thing, very real thing. That if we don't inspect the work, anybody can see just using a regular chat GPT or something. If you don't put any thought into it, you're going to get a lot of bloat in the response. You're going to get not necessarily the quality you want, and you're not necessarily going to keep it on point as much as you wanted. So I think, people are learning to work with that, but now all of these decisions are getting pushed up to the top. So like the decisions that people have now might be the decisions that a team leader or a director in the past would have had to deal with. So I think leaders, people have the who are able to see the big picture are doing really well.
Like sifting through information to make educated decisions, but not completely replacing the person's cognitive ability with the AI agent, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, in another podcast talking about AI and is AI a tool or not? And I think it is a tool still at this point as we talk today in August 2026, and it's still a tool. And the way that to me that you can tell if it's a tool is are you smarter than it or it's smarter than you, right? And there's a point where it could get to become smarter than us, but I think it's still in and not smarter in that it's a specialist kind of IQ kind of thing. Now it's smart in terms of what you want to do. So I still know what I want to do better than what the AI does, right? So it's a tool that serves me. If it got to be smarter than me, right, then I'm a tool for it. In the other way around, at some point, who knows? It could become that. But for now, it's a tool for us, and we have to use it well as we would use any tool.
Right. Now, the agents that you're talking about, are those mostly like Salesforce based agents, or is it any custom builds as well?
Yeah, there are many types of agents, so we can use it for pretty much anything. So we can use it. We use it in the like lead gen process. We can use it in the productivity on the coding side. So PRs, so have a PR review. We can also even have it work on simple PRs for us. And in our well-being application, then we have two parts of it. So there's a kind of assessment agent, right? We have an assessment agent, and then we also have a coaching agent, and the coaching agent and assessment agent can also talk together. So each one of those has its own training and has its own set of work that it can accomplish.
And are those tools that you just mentioned, those services based on AI agents, are those in-house built, or do you outsource to tech suppliers that have more expertise in certain areas?
Yeah, we do it ourselves because we have a pretty solid team. But however, I'll say this. So with tech suppliers, the way that I look at it is that especially with AI, if somebody has more experience than me, then what's really valuable to me is their experience that they've seen do's and don'ts, something I'm looking at, and it may be a new frontier, a new technology that I'm looking at. So I may bring someone in from an advisory level, but in terms of the team's work itself, I'd probably stay with the same team. So it depends. Also, it's on a case by case basis.
Awesome. All right. When a business feels chaotic, how do you typically identify if it's a tech problem or a people problem?
Yeah, I think the tendency when you're talking about tech, especially, is to blame the tech. It's so easy to blame the tool, right? And we see this all the time. We call it user error also. So that the user may be doing something wrong, but the tech gets blamed anyway. So I think that what you have to do is look at what is getting stuck, and is it getting stuck between like people are doing something or something's broken in a process, or then if it's tech. And if it's tech, it's actually the easiest thing to diagnose. So once it's going into the tech and the tech is broken, then we have engineering to look at it and fix it.
Now, when a company scales quickly, is it typically going to be people problem, or is it going to be a tech problem?
Both. So I don't know if it. So I would say that it's people first because of communication. So if you look at it as people are kind of like a network of nodes, nodes are talking to each other, and you have the order of complexity. So as their workload gets to be bigger and bigger, their communication tends to not keep up and their processes don't break up they'll break up because they're not used to that level. So they only have this certain amount of scale that they can do, and people are more complex than tech is really. So I would say that typically it would be the people in the communication that needs to be worked on first in order to scale. But then the tech needs to be looked at, and of course, in terms of scalability. And so if you have MVP that you worked on, it depends how much foresight that you had and effort that went into that MVP, because maybe you wanted to start getting customers quickly, and how much did you have to rush it. And so at a certain point, if you had success, you may have like a champagne problem and you need to like now scale your tech. And that's an engineering problem, an engineering approach that you can do. So probably but the people will break a lot sooner than the software.
Yeah, and I've seen it too with scale where the people are kind of what you described, like their capabilities hadn't caught up to the growth yet. So they brought in the tech, but then the people didn't. It took time for people to learn how to use the new tech and be reminded to use it consistently, whether it was Salesforce or entering data or storing data in certain places or looking for data in certain places. And I think just the alignment on the tech stack is probably a hard thing for a lot of companies to implement. Would you say so?
Yeah, I think that we underestimate culture many times in scaling, and especially if you've been in a certain size for a longer time, people get used to doing things a certain way, and then they're resistant to change. Solving that culture issue may even be more difficult than solving your tech. That's one thing that companies who have been in a certain size for a while, like if you're constantly growing, then maybe you have a culture of constantly adapting. But companies who have been in a certain size for a while, they may have a resistance to that change, and that change involves the culture of your employees and have gotten used to a certain way of working.
Well, how do you know when it's like maybe they have technology right now, but a company's growing or a company's evolving? How do you know whether or not you should try to fix their technology that they currently have or kind of add on to it, and maybe when to just say, hey, um, there's new tech out there. We need to implement some different stuff.
Yeah, I had this issue many times. Taking on new teams, if you have a new client and you have a new team, taking a look at those legacy systems is always something that we have to deal with on the tech side as CTOs. And so basically, the big question is, does it serve the customer and the customer's needs? So that could involve functionally, does it serve the client? Does it scale to the client's needs? Is it reliable? So also, how much would you gain by it versus how much that you're spending on it currently? So there's a lot of cases where nowadays that we have a really good modern approach to things, and we would save so much time developing if we just migrated it. So, something as simple as like a website. We had this recently. So, using WordPress on our marketing website, but it has all these different plugins from third parties, and it's the bloated guy of the tools, right? So, we're looking at Framer now, and it's much lighter. It's one set of same company for hosting tools. It takes in pixel perfect Figma, and you can get things done so quickly. So then you have to ask, what is my migration cost? How long is it going to take? Is it going to be worth it to do it? The same thing if you're talking about like a tech stack, then you have to look at, is it serving the customer or not? If it is, then, and the costs aren't too great, the maintenance isn't too high, you may just want to leave it. But also, will it fit your future plans? So that really depends on the situation. So I've had many times where it didn't fit and we had to migrate, but there have been times also when the cost wasn't worth it. But I will say, like today, the cost of migrating is lower than ever because of AI tools. So I've seen many like Tesla. One of my friends works there, and they had large projects that are like global projects that they didn't want to touch legacy systems, and now they're thinking about it. So there's a lot of instances of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something, if it best suits the customer. How often do you see leaders not have that mindset when they are deciding whether or not they should implement new tech or stick with the old stuff?
Yeah, well, for me, I wear both like a head of product hat and a CTO hat, which may be unique to some organizations, but I've done it for a while. So I always put both hats on when I'm making a decision. It depends which level of leader that you're talking about. So if you're talking about the highest executives, maybe they're looking from a sales point of view. They're looking from dates. I want to know on which date that I can have which functionality. So I think, and it depends on the organization. So you may have a company that has gotten burned before by making snap decisions. And, nowadays, like people do, like speed is king is like one of the companies that I worked for, Gym Launch, which was by Alex Hormozy, founded it. And one of the core tenets was speed is king. So speed is so important nowadays. And that's another point, connecting the dots back to the well-being, that people are getting burned out because of working with AI and trying to keep up with it. You cannot keep up with the AI. Don't try to keep up with it on what it does, or you'll start getting burned out. So I'm kind of digressing there, but yeah, I think that it depends on the organization. I've had both cases where they were thinking about the customers or not thinking about the customers. But in general, I think that's the number one thing that any organization has to think about.
Yeah, no, that's true. As far as AI goes, I feel like AI now, like everyone knows what AI is on to some level. Like everyone knows it's out there at least. But I feel like there's also something in tech now, and just especially in tech sales, where it's like, well, we can have AI help you. To a lot of people that are maybe an older demographic, that's not a good thing for them to hear. They get kind of scared of that. So I'd like to hear from you. What's just something that a business could do today, or start to implement or think about doing today, that maybe on a small scale could start to bring AI into the picture without it being too daunting?
Yeah. Well, for something simple that most people have to be involved in meetings. So a really simple example is a note taker. And, if your organization allows that. So if you're in a small company, that you just add your note taker to your meetings. I use Phantom AI. You have many choices. And it'll send you a summary afterwards. It'll give you a video and a transcript. And then what I do is I just have we have a weekly summary of our activities and a report for the organization. So then I have it set up as a custom GPT and agent. So it'll go into my emails. It looks at all of them, the summaries, summarizes the summaries, and then it puts it into our format. And then I'll go and edit it. So you still have to avoid AI slop, right? And you have to QA your own stuff all the time. So before the report is sent out, you're going to review it. But that saves so much time, saves a lot. And there are things that in your meetings that you would have to really dig into it. So it's an example of like just a menial task that where you can have things sped up for you.
Yeah, no, that's a good example. What's something that businesses try to automate, whether it's with AI or tech or just really anything, that they probably shouldn't automate until they get to a certain point?
Yeah, I would say don't automate your judgment or your decisions. So anything like decisions that require not only data, but like gut feeling and like hiring decisions or customers, like what to do in terms of a customer escalation, something like that. Don't automate those kinds of things. Automate that boring work that's repeatable, that you can speed things up with. So one other thing is like, if a process isn't working well, don't automate that. You want to like fix the process first. So I've seen, for example, people have tried to put bad processes into like a CRM or something like that. It's much more worth it to take another look, refactor your process, and then add it to the CRM. So if they do that, then they end up, again, it's blaming the tool for having a bad process.
On the flip side of that, what's something that they should automate that they're not doing?
I think they're not taking a look at the operations, the day-to-day operations of the company in all cases, because if people are too busy, they skip those things, and they think that they don't have enough time to automate it. But if they just set a little bit of time aside to do it, then they could have those benefits as well. So I think it's more of a decision, like your own like time management and setting aside the time to realize those things, and like understanding like what is signal for you, what's noise, and then taking the priority work and automating those things, setting time aside for it.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes that could involve potentially not wanting to bring in an expert, knowing that you don't have someone on your team that could implement or automate something for you, and hesitancy to outsource something, I feel like is a common issue.
Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, anytime you bring someone in from the outside, you have to give them your context. You've got a knowledge transfer to them so they can get as ground zero. And sometimes they'll ask good questions. If they're good, they'll ask good questions about to get started quickly, but you still need to go through that.
Now, how do you, from an employee standpoint, you've been a tech leader for quite some time now. From an employee standpoint, how do you get buy-in from non-techie people when they've been used to doing something like even something so simple? I was at a company that implemented Salesforce. And a lot of people were like myself, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Now we have everything organized in one spot and it's great. And the other half was like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. This is too much admin work, too much tech, too much whatever. And it was just every excuse under the sun. And eventually they were forced to, or they were going to be behind.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's two approaches for it. You touched on kind of both of those. So one of them is the rational, logical way. And to make it as frictionless as possible, you want it to be, the new process should be simple and work well. One good thing is to get consensus on that. So if you get people's opinion, they tend to go along with it better. So if you can bring people together, have everybody contribute, and then give them feedback, this is what we're going with, and everybody agrees, then they'll tend to go along with it easier. And the other way is also maybe having a mixture there, where going along with it and also involving like leadership, having the leaders buy into it, and having the leaders driving their teams towards this, whatever outcome this is. That those things will both help you to have success.
Yeah, and ample training too, because too many times you see tech or just new processes in general thrown at an organization, and it's kind of a sink or swim situation. So, and if that goes on for long enough, then you can figure it out. It just might not be the right way. So then you've gone down this hole of now you have to clean it up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not always sink or swim. You got to bring people along, and training and have Q&A sessions and things like that. Absolutely.
Well, last question I've got on here for you is, if an owner or any business leader is listening and feels overwhelmed by messy operations, lack of tech, too much tech, what's an action item that they could do today to at least start to figure out some sort of approach to get them through that situation?
I think that first of all, they would have to block some time out for this quality time, and then they have to think about what is signal for them, what is priority, and really take a critical look at it. And then what in their day to day is the noise, and taking that noise and there we have, you can automate it, you can delegate it out, you can eliminate it, but reducing that noise. So you want to try to like you'll never be able to eliminate maybe all noise, or but you want to get as close as you can. So you could say like, my goal from today is to get to 80% signal, and like anything that's not signal, I'm going to have this system to work with it. And then you also structure your schedule around it also. So you make sure that you set aside quality time to focus on signal.
Yeah, it sounds like the same, just kind of going back to spending time doing it and making it a priority. And I think that's an issue for a lot of leaders, and even people who aren't leaders that are just busy with whatever tasks that they're doing. Sometimes those things that we don't want to do end up being the most important things for us to actually block off and focus on.
Yeah, I think there's the human aspect of work, and it's even more important with AI that we bring these aspects in, like respect for each other on your team, and knowing when something is really like needs to be elevated and looked at more critically, knowing when things need to be focused in on, and those are some of the things that I think we can do.
It goes back to well-being from Pavelka.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciated having you on. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you, Michael, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.